give the floor.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for the support. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this information session about the Plastic Waste Amendment. My name is Melissa Lim. I will be taking you through the first presentation of this webinar. We also have with us today Mr. Patrick McKell, representative of the United Kingdom, who will be taking you through the second presentation of this webinar on the technical guidelines on the environmentally sound management of plastic waste. So, the information session today has as its objective to inform you about the activities that can help parties implement the plastic waste amendments, in particular, the more technical aspects of them. So, in terms of background, what we refer to as the plastic waste amendments are changes made to the annexes of the Basel Convention and adopted at the 14th meeting of the Conference of the Parties in May 2019. These amendments will become effective on 1 January 2021. And so this current webinar is one of a series of 3 that are meant to support parties prepare for this date. The first set of webinars were held over the past 2 weeks and dealt with the legal and institutional steps for preparedness. A recording of the webinar is available on the website of the convention. The third series of webinars will deal with enforcement aspects. The exact date and content are yet to be finalized, and I'll ask you to again watch this space on our website to find out more. So today I will be taking you through an introduction to the plastic waste amendments, after which we'll take a tour of the tools and guidance that exist or are under development to help in implementing the amendments. Then, as announced, you will hear a presentation on the process for updating the technical guidelines for the identification and environmentally sound management of plastic waste and their disposal. And we will finally have a session for you to ask questions. Turning to the so-called plastic waste amendments, these are changes made to the annexes of the Basel Convention through decision BC-14/12. In effect, these changes clarify and expand the scope of plastic waste that are subject to regulation under the Basel Convention. As you may know, one of the core mechanisms of the Convention is what we call the prior informed consent procedure for hazardous waste and other waste as defined by the Basel Convention. The amendment adds an entry for plastic waste to Annex 9 of the Convention, which deals with waste that are presumed not to be hazardous and therefore not subject to the PIC procedure. In this case, we have now a series, certain single polymers or a mixture of PE, PP, or PET that are covered by B3011 under Annex 9. Then the amendment introduced a mirror entry to the entry under Annex 9. The mirror was introduced in Annex 2. Annex 2 are wastes that require special consideration and are subject to the PIC procedure. And finally, through entry A3210, the amendments clarifies the scope of plastic waste that are considered hazardous. So, as already mentioned, these amendments will become effective on 1 January 2021. We've prepared frequently asked questions that you can find at the web page shown on this slide that answers questions such as which wastes are covered by the amendments, which wastes were previously covered by the Basel Convention, and also which parties are bound by the amendments. Now, the amendments, given their broad scope, will clearly have an impact on how the transboundary movement of plastic waste happens, but also on the way plastic waste managed at the national level. Given this complexity and the broad scope, it is clear that there will be many questions as to how the plastic waste amendments have to be implemented. It is the prerogative of parties to decide on how they do this at the national level. But of course, information exchange and harmonization is needed to a certain extent at the international level for this mechanism to work effectively. As for the Basel Convention as a whole, and for the plastic waste amendments, parties are at different level of preparedness in terms of implementation, depending on their capabilities and the resources available. There will be challenges with something so complex, and as we know, there are still challenges for many countries in implementing the Basel Convention. That being said, this is no secret to anyone, and every 2 years at the meeting of the Conference of the Parties, there is an opportunity to look at the challenges together and to come up with possible solutions. And really, there are a series of tools and guidance that have been developed to assist parties in implementation. I'd like to refer you to the two main bodies of work that are of relevance for the plastic waste amendment. The first are the technical guidelines, and here there are a number of guidelines, and they deal in general about specific types of waste and their environmentally sound management. You also will find here guidelines on hazardous characteristics and on specific disposal operations. One aim of this presentation today is not only to introduce you to the various tools and guidance available, but also to provide you with a map to the various web page on the website of the convention, where you can read more and learn more about all these various aspects of technical work, because we are aware that there's a lot of information on the web page on our website, and it can be sometimes a bit difficult to find the relevant tools. So today we hope that we will provide you with some information on navigating the website and also understand how the different pieces of work relate to each other, and in particular to the plastic waste amendments and the implementation. The second body of work that is also very relevant is that related to environmentally sound management as a broad policy concept. So over the past 8 to 10 years, the expert group on environmentally sound management has crafted a toolkit that contains a number of guidance and various tools that deal specifically with implementation of this concept. And you will find there things like guidance on extended producer responsibility, self-assessment tool on ESM. So all elements that are will be useful for implementing the plastic waste amendments. Now, in addition to this, because the plastic waste amendment and the plastic waste management issue is a very complex one, the conferences of the parties adopted an accompanying decision to BC 14/12, and it is shown here, it's BC 14/13, further actions to address plastic waste under the Basel Convention. And I will just highlight a few of the activities to which this decision has given impetus for further work, and also guide you to the web page on which you will be able to find further information. So 3 areas of work of high relevance to the amendments. First is the technical guidelines, on which you will hear more in a few minutes in a separate presentation. Second is the establishment of the Partnership on Plastic Waste, which I will tell you about in a few slides. And thirdly, the review of annexes process. And this is an ongoing process, very important for implementation of the convention. And here, the expert working group in charge of this process has been given the mandate to consider whether any additional constituents or characteristics in relation to plastic waste should be added to Annex 103. The expert working group is not yet dealing with this work, with this mandate yet. It's focusing right now on amendments to on the review of Annex 4. And if you want to find out more about this very important work, you can go to the web page shown on the screen. In addition, Decision BC 14/13 refers to 2 additional line of work that are also relevant to the amendments. The first is custom codes. And under this, the Secretariat has been mandated to prepare a proposal to the World Customs Organization for devising custom codes or harmonized system codes corresponding to the plastic waste as listed under the amendments. And there is a draft of this proposal contained in the document shown on the screen, which you will find on our web page. And at the 12th meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group, which took place virtually last week, it was agreed that parties would be invited to provide, parties and observers would be invited to provide comments on this issue by 15 September 2020. And really, I invite you to send in your comments, because it's very important to hear from those who will be using these codes on how best they should be crafted. Another line of work that could be of interest is the development of guidance on inventories of plastic waste. And so here again, there's a draft guidance in document IN15, and parties are invited to provide their comments on how best to improve the applicability and the usefulness of this guidance of particular importance for developing countries. Under Decision 14/13, there are also some elements as to what further activities could be done or undertaken to assess the effectiveness of measures or under the Convention to address plastic waste, and also that could be conducted under the Convention. And here I'd like to highlight that parties were invited to submit information on certain types of single polymers referred to or covered by entry B3011 in Annex 9 of the amendments. At the time of negotiating the amendments, it was felt that by some parties that it may not be necessary to include these cured resins and fluorinated polymers under B3011. So more information is now requested on this issue, and it will be compiled and presented to the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention that will take place in July 2021. So let me now tell you a bit about the Plastic Waste Partnership, which was established by decision BC 14/13. This partnership has as its objective to promote the environmentally sound management of plastic waste. And since its establishment, quite a number of activities have been undertaken, and namely 4 project groups have been established with the mission showed here on this slide. One of them is of particular relevance. It's the project group on transboundary movement of plastic waste. And I'll go into this in a few minutes. But the other thing I'd like to highlight are pilot projects, which will take place under the guidance of the working group of the partnership. A call for proposals for pilot projects have been made, and the deadline is in a few weeks. So if you would like to submit projects, please refer to the web page shown on this slide. In general, the Plastic Waste Partnership is open to all parties and observers to the Basel Convention, and you can join at any time. So if you think you can contribute, and please feel free to send me an email. As mentioned, the project group 3 of the partnership will deal with transboundary movement of plastic waste. It has agreed to 4 activities to be undertaken, and 2 of them are considered priority and will start shortly. Under activity 2, I'd like to highlight that information will be collected on a number of questions that I think a number of parties are having some challenges in implementing, namely what isn't to be understood by almost free from contamination, and what is meant by almost exclusively when it comes to shipments of plastic waste destined for recycling. And under activity 1, there is the plan to develop the fact sheets on relevant custom codes for plastics and plastic waste, as well on the roles and responsibility of key stakeholders in implementing the amendments. So I've taken you through a tour of all the activities that are now ongoing that can help in implementing the amendments, but last but not least, there's the Technical Assistance Program of the Secretariat, under which we are now implementing a number of projects. And through these projects, we will acquire experience in developing countries on challenges encountered in implementing the amendments, as well as develop tools that can be further shared with other parties encountering similar challenges. So I won't go into much detail when it comes to these projects and the tools, but I'll direct you to the web page shown on this website, on this slide. We will have some time for questions and answers further down the road, the line. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. Here you have my contact details on this slide. There are a number of my colleagues who work on all these various aspects of implementation of the Basel Convention. And if you send me a related question, I will be happy to direct you to the right person. So now we will pass the floor to Patrick McHale, who will be giving you a presentation on the technical guidelines on the ESM of plastic waste. Patrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Melissa. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'll proceed. So I'm giving this presentation on behalf of the Small Intersessional Working Group that is working on the technical guidelines on the environmentally sound management of plastic waste. I'm doing this on behalf of my colleagues as well, my colleagues in China and Japan, who are co-leads with the United Kingdom on this work. I'll start the presentation now. So, just in terms of background first, I think many of you will be aware that at the Conference of the Parties in 2002, Decision 621 was adopted, and this covered the current version of the technical guidelines for ESM of plastic waste. The COP last year, in May 2019, Conference of the Parties adopted Decision BC 14/13 and decided to update these guidelines with the establishment of a small intersessional working group. This working group is co-led by China, Japan, and the United Kingdom, and has representatives from parties and other stakeholders, and is being supported by consultants. More details are available at the convention website, as shown on this page. Moving on, I want to give an update on what the Small Intersessional Working Group has been doing since the Conference of the Parties last year. The group revised the table of contents of the guidelines adopted in 2002 and circulated that for comments just after, or I can't remember, Carla I'm sure will remind me, it was around Christmas of 2019. The group has subsequently developed a new draft, which is based on this revised table of contents. And the current draft was brought to the attention of the open-ended working group of the Basel Convention and is available on the link provided on this page. There is a deadline for comments on the current draft of the 15th of September, and I would encourage everyone with an interest in this subtopic to review the current draft guidelines and provide comments to the Secretariat by the 15th of September. That will allow the Small Intersessional Working Group and the consultant who is supporting us to consider those comments in the revisions of the draft guidelines. I just wanted to provide you with a bit of an outline of the current draft guidelines. So the current draft starts with an introduction, which covers scope and common types of plastics. It then moves on to talk about the relevant provisions of the Basel Convention and the Stockholm Convention and other international linkages. It then moves on to cover guidance on the environmentally sound management of plastic wastes. And I won't propose to go through this list, but I will leave it on the screen for you to review. You will see that it is particularly focusing on subjects like legislative and regulatory framework, waste prevention, monitoring, and environmentally sound disposal. There will be there's also a special consideration in the draft guidelines on degradable plastic waste and an annex which contains complementary information. Now, The draft guidelines are, as indicated, a draft, and there are a number of matters in which we've received comments previously from stakeholders and parties and observers on a range of issues. And I think there are a number of items which the small intersessional working group is still considering and under discussion. I think this is a list of some of those items. It's not an exhaustive list. Things that I would particularly point out are issues like marine plastic litter and waste prevention and minimization. There are parties who are on the small intersessional working group who particularly think these issues are important and need significant coverage in the draft guidelines. There is also further discussions likely to go ahead, I think, over the course of the next few months, linking the current draft guidelines to the recent amendments to the Convention. Thank you. Going forward, as I've mentioned already, parties and observers to the Basel Convention have been asked to provide comments on the current draft available on the Basel Convention website at the link I provided earlier by the 15th of September. The small intersessional working group will continue to revise the guidelines, taking into account these comments, plus comments that we received earlier in 2019, which we were unable to include in the latest draft. The small intersessional working group will meet online to discuss and negotiate the next revised version, and this meeting is tentatively scheduled for December 2020. We expect that we'll be able to provide a new revised version of guidelines for consideration of the COP in 2021, or an assessment of whether this new version needs to have further revisions next year before the COP or following it. Based on what Melissa mentioned, I think there's a slot for questions and answers. I presume that's at the end of this session, of this entire presentation, as opposed to right now. But I do hope that you have found the information useful, and I'm very happy to take questions. And I'm sure I'm joined also by my colleagues Nana, who's also the co-lead representative for China, and by Carla from the Secretariat. I'm happy to pass back now to Melissa, because I presume question and answers will be at the end of this session.